All right. Welcome to the Outbound Sales Protocol by SalesCaptain. This is the exact same process that we implemented for our clients, the one that we've built and optimized after having sent more than 100,000 cold messages, and the one that has allowed us to get responses from Fortune 500 companies across multiple industries, including responses from the CEOs of Amazon, Microsoft, and many more like that. So everything starts on step zero with the outbound strategy system kickoff, the strategy session more specifically. During the strategy session, what we're trying to understand and get an insight for is what does the ICP look like? What is the niche that we're going to target? What's the current state of the business? But more than that, what is the sales goal that will make the outbound project a success? What does the annual contract value or the average deal size look like for that specific business? And what would be a good estimate for the revenue that can be generated from the project in a period of 6 and 12 months? And this gives us a really good overlook of whether this project is actually a fit for outbound and how cost effective the program is going to be for that, including obviously an overview of the current activities, how many leads are getting generated right now, how many more leads would we need to hit that goal, and what does the close rate look like. Obviously, different channels have different close rates. Paid ads versus referral and word of mouth versus outbound represent three different close rates, so we have to factor that in when we're estimating the number of leads to be generated. And more than that, obviously, what does the outbound funnel look like? We have our own KPIs. We call them the outbound KPIs, the gold KPIs of outbound, which dictate pretty much the performance of the campaign and the optimization metrics. And then what does the pricing and the cost structure look like for building the process in house or for outsourcing the process and validating that this indeed makes sense based on the geography of the company and a few other elements like that. So once we've gone after this exercise, the immediate next step is defining the ICP and the goals. So for that, we typically define 3 to 4 ICPs on every new project. The reason for that is obviously we want to be able to test a few different approaches to a few different audiences and figure out which one performs best. And then obviously every message and every campaign gets built specifically for that ICP. This ties in directly with the prospect list building and the initial lists that are getting built for the project. At the beginning of the project, it's not about volume, it's about validating the message and getting to message market fit. So making sure that out of every 100 messages we send out, a good percentage of those are actually positive responses and calls booked, which is the success KPI for any project at the end of the day. And then the list building, it's done in a manual way. We go through each one of the prospects by hand and their companies, and we might hand vet against multiple different data points. And the reason for that is we want to bucket them in that specific bucket out of the 3 or 4 niches that we've identified. That's going to allow us then for the personalized copy to come into effect and for those messages to be perceived as genuine messages with valid intent and the reason for us to be reaching out. So these are the first steps when building the ICP. There's a few different elements that we look into. This is an example of what that typically looks like, and it's things like the industry, obviously, the seniority level, the decision makers within the business, the total addressable market. Will make like a screenshot using our premium sales data of that industry, and obviously more psychographic elements like what are some of the problems and the failures that people have gone through and the state of mind that they are, and what does the ideal result look like for each different niche, including obviously elements like any relevant case studies, any authoritative pieces, the relevant offer for every niche, and obviously detailed guidelines on how to target each one of those niches and ICPs. This ties in directly with the message flows. This is a really quick example for a campaign, including 4 different messages for those flows for targeting these specific niches. These are the first steps along with the list building that take place. And then obviously the next part, after we've defined the ICPs and the goals, after we've built out the lists and have prepared the initial list for the testing and the campaign copywriting, is the account and setup and automations. If it is a new campaign, the account warm up might take 2 to 3 weeks, which is perfectly fine as we're working through the additional details. If there's existing accounts that are warmed up, the campaign can pretty much go live instantly. And then another part is the automations part. We've actually built our own infrastructure and the back end of the system to be able to integrate with any kind of platform, any kind of CRM, whether you're using HubSpot or Salesforce, or whether you're using Slack for your messages or WhatsApp or even Telegram, we can actually have a few different pieces of integration and a few different elements and activities taking place. So all of that is getting built in the first stage of the project, and we're going to dive into more detail in a sec. And then as soon as we have the campaigns ready to go live, the account set up, the automations, and all the infrastructure required for the project to go live, the next step is obviously planning, running, and managing the campaigns. In planning the campaigns, and obviously in running multiple A/B tests and reaching out to different industries at the same time, we've developed what we call the campaign plan. The campaign plan is essentially where all the different pieces from the ICPs, the copies, and everything else, the accounts come together, and where we identify that for any given month, this is a number of prospects we're going to be reaching out to. These are the campaigns, and this is how everything aligns together. And this is a really quick overview of what the campaign plan looks like. Obviously, it might differ per company, or it might differ depending on the ICPs that are being targeted, but it brings everything together. As soon as the campaign plan is ready, and this is done on a monthly basis, we start running the campaigns in order to validate the message, obviously, and continue generating prospects based on the performance of the campaigns. In managing the replies, there's quite a few different things that take place, obviously, because we hand vet each one of the responses, and also because of the infrastructure and a few different elements that take place. The first one that's really interesting is what we call the personalized sales conversation. So for people who don't respond necessarily positively, we have built our own system and our own copywriting formula for how to respond to the most common objections in any different niche and for every different service, so that you can maximize your results. And besides that, obviously, the next step is, once you've started getting responses and once you've started getting calls booked, is reporting and optimization. So there's a few different elements that I want us to run through right here. The first one is the real-time sales notifications. As I mentioned, whether you're using Slack or Messenger or anything like that for your sales team to communicate, or even just plain old email, our infrastructure integrates with that. So the moment there is a positive response, or the moment there's a call booked, or the moment someone from the sales team needs to step in, the automation takes care of that. We'll deliver a notification in real time, whether it's on Slack or any other platform. And this is where our automation infrastructure takes place. If the response is positively, obviously we'll hand that over to you and your sales team to respond. If the response is negative, we'll unsubscribe the company. We don't want to be mass spamming or be perceived as spammers. So with a negative response, we just pause the campaigns for that specific company and for that specific lead for a good period of time, and then we start the campaigns again a few months after, obviously not to that specific lead. So real-time sales notifications, including any positive responses going into your team's inbox and your own inbox, whether that's email or any other platform you use for that, and also obviously getting those responses recorded on the reporting sheet, the reporting hub. This is what we call it, and this is like an overview of what that looks like. And you can see here the responses classified. Positive response, negative response could be do not contact, but hopefully, if everything goes well, most of your responses are going to be good enough, or you're going to have a really good response of positive to negative ratio. So that's that on the infrastructure part. Obviously, besides the reporting hub and the live sales notifications, the leads get added to your CRM as well. Depending on the activity they do, if it's a positive response, we have a sales pipeline dedicated to positive responses and managing positive responses. If it's a call booked, it can be a different stage in the pipeline, probably aligning with what you already have and the leads that you might already be generating from additional channels. And then the next step that happens in the reporting and optimization process is obviously a monthly report. The monthly report is a bit more in depth than the weekly report and than the reporting hub, which has a different additional elements to it. In the monthly report, we look at the campaigns overall and we try to identify the best performing sequences, the best performing channels, the best performing ICPs, the worst performing ICPs at the same time, the messages that do make people resonate and convert, the subject lines that worked, the body of text that worked, the CDAs that might have worked, and then we define and recommend implementations and optimizations on two different levels. The first one is on a smaller campaign level, whether it's a copy optimization or something small, and the second one is or could be even a restructuring of the campaign overall to meet our criteria for outbound, what we call the gold KPIs of outbound. And this is a quick overview of how things work. With the monthly report, obviously, we're able to optimize a bit more and we're able to dive into the campaigns. And then, roughly with one or two iterations of that, an iteration which is a campaign plan, launching the campaign plan, running the campaigns, and getting insights, that period of time typically takes 2 to 3 weeks. Within one or two iterations of that, in most cases, we're able and quite confident to say this campaign is actually hitting the criteria. This campaign works against our gold KPIs and is actually a campaign that we're proud of and typically generating the results that we want. So this is a really quick overview of the outbound sales protocol. Obviously, there's multiple elements within every different step and a lot of additional elements that we take into consideration and that we operate and optimize against in any different stage. But at least now you have a good overview of what the system looks like and what the different steps look like to getting live, running the campaigns, managing the campaigns, and actually achieving the results that we want to achieve together. And that's it. Let me know if you have any questions and chat to you soon. Bye bye.